entertained. Your hosts, Karen Klaus and former Bexar County District Attorney Nico LaHood.
If there was ever a week that there was way too much happening, on top of too much happening, it's going to be today's show because there are so many things to talk about. Yes, we're going to talk about the race that we are all hopefully voting early on, but I have to just do a shout out for Nico LaHood because you had a big win yesterday. And I want to do the intros first because for anybody that has never listened to this show before, you're in for a treat. Former Bexar County DA Nico LaHood, trial lawyer, managing partner of LaHood Norton Law Group, and Georgia Ruggio, scholar, former chemist, pharmaceutical researcher and director, and that really doesn't cover everything that George does. But you had a big win in court yesterday.
We did.
Wow.
We were blessed. It was a federal trial. It was a very serious allegation, an ugly allegation. Our position was our client was not guilty of murder for hire. And, it was, we weren't supposed to win, and we just worked very hard, our whole office, but myself and a colleague, David Shear, tried the case. And the representatives for the government were honorable people. I mean, they really are a credit to the government. And I say that very sparingly for the federal government. And they did it. They were honorable. They did a good job. They were professional.
You weren't in Bexar County then?
I was in Bexar County.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we were in Bexar County.
Wow.
It's in our courthouse downtown.
Wow.
We're in front of Jason Pulliam. He's an excellent federal judge, very thoughtful. We're blessed to have him on as a jurist here on the federal side. He listens. He looks into case law. He'll listen to your argument. I disagreed with a number of his rulings, but that's the way it goes. You just have to deal with it and you move forward. So it was a very, very big win for the family. Forget about us. I mean, of course, it's nice when a law firm wins a big win like that.
Sure.
And we're humbled by that, and we want to work hard on all our cases, and we do. But for the family, it was really a blessing. It was a blessing to see, and I really like the family, so it makes the case even harder when you actually like the people that you're fighting for. So we're humbled by it.
It's so odd, though, because the last big trial that you had, I was just stunned by the outcome, and then it got turned around.
And it got turned around appropriately, which it was supposed to happen that way. I always tell people God's timing is perfect. So I do my part in the system. Our job is to work hard, to work honestly, to work fearlessly. And then that's all you can do because it's not about our firm. It's not just about us. I mean, it's about the client, first of all, and it's about other people collaterally that deal with the situation. There's friends and family. And for me, as a biblically minded man and man of faith, I mean, God's working it all out, right? For everybody, not just us. So we do our part, and then wherever the chips fall, they fall.
And then when I mentioned early voting, I hope people are going to go out and early vote. And I mentioned this because when I talk about your family, your brother Mark, and other local races aren't talked about as much right now because of the presidential election. But this is so important also.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Mark's running in District 121 for state rep. And the thing that irritates, pisses me off, whatever, I'm defensive because I'm his brother, but I try to stay objective and logical. And I'm not trying to divide because we need everyone to vote. But, when Steve Allison is the guy that Mark ran against and a former public servant, Jeff Wentworth, I mean, when they endorsed his opponent, Laurel Swift, and it's like, how can you say that you were ever conservative or Republican? I mean, the things she stands for, I mean, she doesn't, and I'm not being disrespectful, we're just going to call balls and strikes here. I mean, she doesn't support the border stuff. She supported defunding the police. She supports abortion on demand, whatever your position is on that, but on demand. DEI, woke, ideologies, expanding Medicare to millions, including the illegals. I mean, just that. I mean, the typical left, the really progressive left. How can you, if you're just pissed off, say you're pissed off, you're not entitled to a position. Mark felt that there were some things that Mr. Allison was not doing that were in line with the conservative ideology and mindset and were harming that district. And so he ran. He has a right to run. And Mr. Allison had a right to run. He ran against somebody. He ran too. And no one, you don't own that position. That's the part that irritates the crap out of me with some of these public officials. You don't own that. The people own that position. And you're an employee and you're running for rehire, not re-election. It's rehire. And if the people don't believe you're doing a good job, the people spoke. So if you truly are believing in that ideology, conservative Republican ideology, then you dust off your feet and then either you stay quiet or you support the candidate that won. If you really believe that. But then to support this, I mean, Jeff Wentworth, I mean, to me, that's an embarrassment. And I'm not, I mean, if they were in front of me, I'd say the same thing. You know me, I don't pull my punches, but I want to be appropriate. But it's just, they want to come personal attacks on Mark. Hey, I warned him. You signed up for this, Mark. If you don't want to get attacked personally, stay home. So fine. but it just shows how weak you are if you can't talk about the issues. If I'm going for a job interview and George and I are going for the same job and George has to criticize me personally and not about my job description, well, then George's not ready for the job and he's not ready to fight me for that job. And that means you're not going to get the best employee, Karen. And that's the idea that here. So look, I'm proud of Mark. Mark came into this public life after my pop and I. And he's made his own name and he's made his own way and he's running for the right. Because I grilled his ass, man. I mean, I grilled his ass. He's running for the right reasons. And I'm proud to stand beside him, in front of him, behind him, wherever he wants me to stand. And I know he will serve his 121 well. He will talk to Democrats and Republicans that didn't vote for him. He will embrace their ideas without supporting them if he doesn't believe in them. But he will listen, and they'll always have a seat at the table with him, and he'll be fearless, and he'll fight for the state. And he'll disagree with Abbott or whoever else if he has to. If he doesn't agree, he's not a puppet. I know this dude. He's tough. He's been through the similar stuff that I've been through with the loss of our brothers and having to fight stuff. And so he's a fighter, and he's honorable, and he'll bow his knee to God and make sure that he does what's right. So he'll serve our state well. So I think that's I won't say what I think it is on this side of the program.
Thank you.
But Mr. Allison and Wentworth, I think that's embarrassing. I think what you've done is you've hoarded out your whole political career for your emotions. That's it. So everything you said you stood for, everything you ran for, you didn't, because that's not a principle if it sways on your passions or your feelings. So that's it. All right, my spiel's over on that deal.
It's funny that you bring
He's
this
my
up
brother, so
and
give me
that
some
that you talked
latitude.
about your brother and that you warned him that he would be criticized.
Attacked, not criticized. Attacked.
And the same thing is happening on a national scale.
Sure.
And the name calling has just heated up unbelievably. And hopefully we're going to get a chance to talk about this today, but also next Saturday when you guys are in front of a live studio audience, and we're inviting everybody to come out. That's going to be November 2nd, Prestige Motorsports. We want you to come and be a part of the live audience. So what do you think about this Hitler, fascist, all of these words that Kamala is using? I mean, is it going to, in the end, be to her advantage? What kind of strategy is that?
I think there's a lot of linearity between what Nico just said and what Marco's experiencing at a smaller scale locally and what we're seeing on a national scale. This is the constitutional order, is it? I mean, the founders and their genius decided that disaffected voters who were, you live locally, you live in communities. And if you feel like you're disaffected in a local community, then the place to make change is right there in that local community. This is part of the constitutional order. Like you said, the voters have spoken. You may not like your opponent, but respect the voters. I mean, respect your constituency. This is an unbelievable level of disrespect. I think we're seeing that on steroids at the national level. There's no argument being made, no appeal being made to the voters anymore. I mean, Kamala's left that behind. This is Trump is Hitler 2.0. This is a rehashed smear of her opponent.
But then they wonder why people want to do it. What would you not do to stop a Hitler? I mean, it's like the Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney, and his first name is appropriate for him. I mean, so the Cheneys, the support Harris, then you can't say you have principles. My point is, if you have an ideology that's embedded in you, a principle doesn't change. And the principle applies to you. Don't say you have a principle then. Don't say you have principles. Don't say that this is your ideology. Just don't say it. Just say that something else. Say that you said what you had to say to get in office. You thought that was the best way, and that's where the winds were going that time, and that you're a chameleon. Just say that, and at least I'll respect it. I won't like it, and I won't support you, but I'll at least respect that you're not a liar.
And if the system's working well in political campaigns, there ought to be consequences for those actions, and we are seeing consequences for that. We're seeing a late break for Donald J. Trump, and I think it has to do with what Nico just said. You're not addressing questions that the voters have been unbelievably clear that they want answers to. She just simply refused. I know you're going to get into the CNN town hall, but I think it's an embodiment of this problem. An absolute blatant refusal to answer a single question about a single issue. It's stunning to me. I know we've been saying it week after week, but it should get less pronounced, not more pronounced.
Nico says it perfectly when he says they're throwing her softballs, and she's still striking out. I did
either 14 or 16 town halls my last year in office. I mean, I didn't know what anybody was going to, but it was true handles. It wasn't staged. I didn't have someone next to me
Teleprompter.
to give me certain, here are the first questions we're going to ask, and we're only going to take 2 questions from the audience. It was all about the audience. I mean, there was no one there moderating a town hall. It's a town hall. I sat there, I opened with just a kind of an overview talk, and then that was it, the whole time taking questions. And that was it.
Yep.
And it was just boom, 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 back and forth. I had no idea what people were going to ask. And I just took 14 to 16 of them all over Bexar County. So I'm not speaking from ignorance. So you're going to tell me that she had no idea? I don't know. The one with Maria Shriver says everything.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I know you have questions. I hope we cover them. We have these predetermined questions. Okay.
Predetermined.
I mean,
that was crazy.
Where she's at in the campaign, she's been in office 4 years. She's been campaigning all this time. You are training up. I mean, you should have this stuff off the top of your head, which I know we got to talk about Trump on Rogan. I haven't even seen the
3
whole
hours.
thing.
It's already
3 hours.
released,
It's at 10.5 million views.
I saw it. It was,
in 12
it
hours.
was up late.
Already?
It was up late.
10.5 million views.
And last night they
Lots
tried
of-
to block it on
I saw-
on
I heard
YouTube.
that.
They
Real-
tried.
Real conversational, very policy
only an
heavy.
hour and a
I
half
thought-
in.
I
Don't
thought
tell me
pretty policy
everything.
heavy.
No, I'm
the
joking.
end.
I'm only an hour and a half in. And I'm watching at 1.5. That's tough listening to Trump at 1.5.
The reason why I think the CNN town hall is significant is because CNN positioned it as an audience of undecided voters. This is the constituency here that's on the line. Hardcore Democrats are voting Kamala. Got it. Hardcore Republicans are voting Trump. Got it. Although it has shown that Trump has really widened his base over the last few weeks. I mean, he's really gone into the Democratic camp and peeled back all kinds of demographics. We've talked about black voters, particularly black young men, making significant inroads in the Hispanic community. And of course, he's even doing that with suburbanite women. So that aside, this is on the line for her.
Hey, you know what? We're going to take a break right now, but I
break.
definitely want to get into why you think that even some Democrats are making the break. We're going to be right back with more on Sidebar. WOAI. This is Sidebar. Remember, if you'd like to join the live studio
One
audience.
more week, Karen.
Yes.
One more week. We got people signing up on Eventbrite. So on the comments, I'm going to put the link. I'm going to pin the link to the comments because I wish it was a place we could have 1,000 people, but we can't have 1,000 people. So it's going to be limited seating. So we want to know how many people are going to show up just to take care of them. So it's at 9 a.m. We're going to go live at 9 a.m. But please get there by 8:30 a.m.
A lot of people are asking, how is the parking? What do I have to do? But the whole bottom line is, if you've signed up, get there early.
Please.
So that you can be seated and placed and in place. So
And I'm trying to, because there's a lot of people like Nico and George say all the time, we want to have a conversation. And there's some people that don't agree with some things that could be said here. So I told them, hey, join us on November the 2nd because we're going to have a Q&A also. So it'll be fun.
So the Joe Rogan interview, the Joe Rogan podcast, apparently Joe Rogan's team had asked Kamala Harris if she also wanted to be on the show, but because of scheduling conflicts, this close to the election, she couldn't make it.
No, but she was elsewhere talking to somebody else with much less visibility. And Rogan would have been tough. I think Trump's right. I think, Trump's funny. He's like, man, if you kidding me? She's not going to come on here. And Rogan said, no, I actually want to have a conversation with her. And Trump said, that's fine, but she's not going to come on here. And if you ask her the questions you're asking me, she's going to be laying on the floor. You're going to have to get somebody to help her out. I mean, he was funny. He was comedic. It was conversational, but it was substantive. They got into stuff.
Well, Joan will let you not. So if you know, I don't watch him shows on a regular basis. I watch the ones that interest me,
Right.
the people that are the topics that interest me. But he's inquisitive. He's not cross-examining his guests, but he inquires and he asks questions. He's the master of follow-ups. He doesn't leave you alone. I mean, you got to answer that question. Like a little kid, why? What does that mean? And then what next? And then what do you think? What do you mean by that? And how are you going to do this? It's like the how, what, where, when, and why, the open-ended question, which you never do in cross-examination, by the way, in trial. But this is an open-ended question. And so that means Kamala, she'd be pushed back, and she would ask the follow-up questions. So it's a follow-up podcast, and she would do horrible with that. And so, like I said, it's been an hour and a half in. It's been interesting, and it's been a good conversation so far.
Yeah, and if you look at, so it was substantive. It had substance. Trump got into the weeds on some things. He was conversational, comedic, and others. Love the flow. I only watch it because I think it's an important contrast. I think Rogan tries real hard. He's not a partisan.
No, but I think he definitely leans. He's not a progressive.
But he's not a partisan. He's not there carrying the flag for the Republicans.
No.
He's not out there carrying the flag for
the Democrats. He wants to talk about ideas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think this is, when you're talking about, growing your base and peeling undecided voters into your camp, this is a great podcast to go into.
Yeah.
And so it would have been a great opportunity for her. And it was the same attitude with the Al Smith dinner, right? She is getting killed with the Catholic vote, just destroyed. And that's true.
She should.
She should have gone to the Al Smith dinner and made an appeal. Didn't. That's low-hanging fruit. The Al Smith dinner, are you kidding me? Yeah, they would have some fun laughs, but I think people overall would have been relatively respectful. She blew that off. But if you look at the CNN town hall, my goodness, a relatively friendly environment. Yes, undecided voters. But these are things, like Nico said, that she's been asked about over and over again, had nothing to say. I mean, we're talking about the economy, Israel, Gaza, her policy goals. This one, I frankly don't understand how there's no answer to this question yet. How does your presidency differ from Joe Biden's?
Yeah.
No answer to that question. Immigration, are you kidding me? The border wall. Good for Anderson Cooper to say, is this the Kamala Harris that supports the border wall after the Kamala Harris that didn't support the border wall? It was sort of his way of saying that, how she's done a pivot there. She's done a pivot on a lot of things. She blew that. And then somebody asked her about what do you think your mistakes and weaknesses are? And I think if I understood correctly, she said, my weaknesses are I hang around too many smart people. I think I understood that correctly. And I thought, wait, you hang around too many smart people? How's that a bad idea? Apparently it's not rubbing off. And I thought, okay, so that's a missed opportunity. They asked her about taxes. They asked her about the United States Supreme Court. Nothing. And she just had this constantly stupefied look on her face. And so the reason I'm not talking about this as a Trump sycophant. I'm a voter. I may not agree with you. I'm not going to vote for Kamala Harris. I'm not. But I'm not going to vote with her because she has nothing substantive to say about the questions that I care about. Nico, I think she's apathetic. She doesn't care enough to answer a question. It's not about disagreement and agreement. She doesn't even care enough to provide an answer to questions that voters have demanded from her. And so I think the consequences should be what we're seeing, and that's a late break for Trump.
But I can't figure out, Karen, whether it's a lack of intelligence, and because I'm not into the name. Just let's talk facts. Is it lack of intelligence, or is it she's just terrible at extemporaneous speaking, and she can't think on her feet? And you would think, as a prosecutor, as a trial lawyer, if she was a trial lawyer. Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how many off-the-cuff conversations she has, or how many public speaking engagements she has where you don't have a read speech, or you don't have your outlines and there's not dialogue. I don't know.
But I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but Fetterman had a stroke and could have had more expression on what his feelings are one way or another on topics.
I mean, you can listen to him now. I mean, he's making more. I mean, he started making more and more sense about a year ago. I was like, man, this dude is back on. Okay, and I was agreeing with some of the stuff he said. We've talked about on the show some of the stuff that Fetterman has said, and it's baffling to me. The lack of engagement. She is not even if you're a Democrat or an independent, I don't know how you can with a straight face say that she is a genuine person. She's flipped on everything. Like, I think someone's keeping track. It's not my stupid ass, but I mean someone's keeping track. 15 different topics or different issues she's flipped on, and Anderson, from the clips that I saw, questioned her on some of that, and she has no legitimate. J.D. Vance, look, I criticized Trump. Here's why. And then he actually governed. And then I saw his policies. And then I saw the results of his policies. And I was wrong. I was wrong. Next question. Well, how wrong were you? 100%? I don't know. I mean, you understand, you take away your argument when you just embrace your poor judgment or your poor assessment. And she just, I'm baffled by it this late in the game.
Yeah.
And it makes sense why she's avoiding these.
Yes, it does. It really does. And I think that might have been the best strategy for her to avoid this, because it's a disaster. I mean, I was really just trying to go point category by category. And it seemed to come back, and David Axelrod kind of hammered her on this.
Say who he is. Not everybody knows who he is.
David Axelrod is really credited to be sort of Barack Obama's Karl Rove. Karl Rove's believed to be the architect of the George W. Bush presidency, at least a successful campaign. And David Axelrod is a Democratic strategist and a former advisor to Obama, and he's on CNN as a regular. And I mean, if you lose David Axelrod, something's wrong. And he was, I think he deemed word salad city to describe her.
Yeah, I heard that.
And let me just give you an example on an issue that I think is critical, because the economy. Well, first of all, let me go back to her sort of her base talking point of Trump being unfit, and Trump being, again, a threat to democracy.
Unfit physically or mentally?
Just unfit for the presidency.
Okay.
And that he's unhinged. And then, I mean, things just kept coming back to that. I mean, Cooper asked Kamala if she believed that she would be more pro-Israel than Trump, to which she said, and I quote, "I believe that Donald Trump is dangerous," end of quote. That's your answer? Then she had an undecided voter come up, and I'm going to keep saying that, because these are the people that are on the fence. This is what will make or break the election in swing states, according to all the polling. Woman comes up and asks her about taxes. She says, "I'm not going to raise taxes on anyone making less than $400,000 a year." You've heard that talking point. So Cooper interjects and says, "Okay, so if you're earning $500,000 or $600,000 or $700,000 a year under your plan, there's a good chance that your taxes will go up." Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
She says, quote, "We can't have this conversation without knowing. It's a very complicated situation," end of quote. That's the answer.
Wait, what did she say?
No,
I saw that video. It was ridiculous.
That's the point. The answer, Trump or Cooper says, if you're going to make $500,000 or $600,000 or $700,000 a year, there's a good chance under your plan that you're going to get taxed considerably, because you just said, "I'm not going to tax anybody making $400,000, so therefore anybody over that, they're fair game." And she said, quote, "We can't have this conversation without knowing. It's a very complicated situation," end of quote. That's it.
I know.
And then segue to something else. And this is the whole town hall was like this. And to Nico's point earlier, to my count, every single one of those CNN analysts said that she did not do herself any favors and that she's in trouble. She's in trouble. And she should be in trouble. Because,
don't get me wrong. I'm not an undecided voter, but people are still voting for her, and it's still apparently neck and neck.
Yeah, I don't know if it's neck and neck. And I just, the only thing I can think of is the people have bought into the ideology of a Democrat platform, or to being labeled a Democrat. Because and this I think applies to especially older Hispanic and Black voters, because their idea of a Democrat was Bobby Kennedy, was maybe a Tulsi Gabbard. It would be the newer generation of an old school blue dog Democrat, and they're just that becomes your identity. It's like, no, but we've always been Democrat, and it's always been this way. And no, a Democrat means this. No, it doesn't anymore, sir. It means this. I'm telling you, and I'm going to show it. I'm going to vote it. It's just not that way anymore. I mean, you've completely gone. I'm telling you, and you've heard me say this before. If you listen to old speeches from Obama, from Clinton, from Schumer, from Feinstein, from Reid, from all these old school Democrats, if you just heard the speeches in today's analysis and you put them in front of young Democrats and Republicans today, they'd all say, "Oh, those are Democrats." If they didn't know who they were, just heard the speeches, didn't recognize their voices. I mean, you understand? And there's a lot of people that think that way. This is my humble opinion. That think that way. And so they buy in that way. They don't realize, and maybe in their world, their little bubble, it doesn't affect them. They're not really analyzing, the effects of it. Or they just can't stand Donald Trump. I mean, that's fine too. Or they've labeled what a Republican is. and to a Republican was like a stiff old white dude that was a hypocrite and looked down on Mexicanos and blacks and Asians or whatever else. And that's in their mind what it is. And it's not that way anymore. I mean, look, you have to contend with this if you're undecided or if you're someone that leans. You have to contend with the fact that the Republican Party is more inclusive than the Democrat Party. You just have to. You have to contend with that because it's a fact. When you have people of all walks of life, and they're agreeing on a couple of things: freedom, free speech, secure borders, and entrepreneur spirit, and freedom. I mean, that's it. I mean, whether they differ a little bit on a lot of it on abortion. You're different on maybe other things. You're different on faith. You're different on this. But there's still these traditional ideas, dare I say, values that, hey, I don't know, you can label those values whatever the hell you want to label them, Christian, Judeo-Christian, biblical, whatever. But those are the values that I was raised, and they serve my family pretty well. I don't want to label them that. They're just American values. Okay, check. That's what I think is bringing people together on that. And the Republican Party is more inclusive. They just are.
I love it because I have been seeing T-shirts that actually people are buying. I don't know, or it's not confirmed, but I even think Walmart was selling it that says, "I'm voting for the outlaw and the hillbilly." And I have to laugh because...
That's in Walmart?
I saw it online.
Hard to believe, right?
Yeah. Well, it's not at Target for sure.
For the outlaw
Don't go to Target.
and the hillbilly. And it makes me laugh because it makes me think only the people that understand the masses say it's okay. It's okay that people are calling him this and calling him that. He's more like us than she is.
I think that's right. I think the strategy of the invective and trying to brand people, I think she's about 10 years too late. I mean, this just doesn't work anymore. People are feeling the pain of really bad policy, and so now they're looking for real answers.
Okay.
We need to talk about the Hitler stuff too, because that's dangerous
Please,
stuff.
we're going to do
That's
that
dangerous
next
stuff.
because like I said, there's too much to talk about this week. But join us online also. Get on a platform. We'll talk about that coming up after the break. We'll be right back. This is Sidebar. Please
We're getting
remember-
ready for November the 2nd. It's going to be amazing that we can interact with all of you guys. Thank you for more people are reserving their spots. So it was amazing seeing people just reserve their spot through Twitter, X, same thing, Facebook and YouTube. So thank you very much. So remember, in the comments, I have pinned the link for our Eventbrite event so you can be part of what's going to happen on Saturday, November the 2nd. Nico, let me ask you a question because, man, sometimes, you don't want to insult anybody. You don't want to play that game. And Karen is trying so hard to believe something is real, right?
What do you mean? What do you mean?
For example, like Kamala, right? I feel sometimes, I don't want to insult her or anything, but I think I'm giving her too much props for it. I don't think they're voting for her. They're not. Like I don't think it's Kamala. Like the Democrats just want somebody, higher ups want somebody they can just manipulate. We're not voting for a Kamala.
The people are voting for a platform, a label, an ideology, or at least what they think the ideology is. They're not voting for her. I mean, she couldn't win the primary. She couldn't. I mean, she wasn't.
No, but I'm saying if she wins, it's not her deciding. She's not the president. Am I stupid to think like that?
No, I don't think it's stupid to think that way. I mean, I think we've seen evidence of that with Biden. Someone's running Biden. He himself. I mean, he did something the other day that was ridiculous.
Because if Trump wins, I think he's going to, it's going to be him deciding. Okay, we're going to do this and his decisions.
Without a doubt.
But if Kamala wins, that's not her.
No, and let me just go back real quick. It's not that I try not to insult people. I'm going to speak the truth, and I'm going to do it boldly. I'm going to try to do it the proper way. And if the truth insults you, well then, tough crap. That's just the way it goes. And vice versa with me too. It doesn't just apply one way. So I'm going to speak the truth. I'm going to do it, hopefully with courage and logic. So it's not that I want to, but I don't get into that game of, so-and-so's an idiot. Okay, well, tell me how. I'd rather you tell me what that person is, and then equals an idiot.
Gotcha.
Right? Don't start with the idiot. The result is the idiot.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just me.
But even for those, older folk that you're talking about that say, I'm a Democrat, I've always been a Democrat, how can they listen to Kamala Harris and still...
You can't. They just don't. And so they just vote.
And
there's no way.
And that's been the subject of the most, I think, fascinating poll season I've ever had the honor, truly an honor. This is fun. I mean, to actually, but to see, you keep talking about ideas. We talk about it sometimes in theoretical aspects, ideas. The idea that ideas should move history, which, by the way, a total rejection by Marxism, which says that it's not ideas that move history at all. It's economics, right? And class warfare. But ideas, the idea that ideas move history, that's kind of been your premise, Dico. It's sort of a mantra for you. You keep saying that ideas. We got to get back to battling around ideas, jousting around ideas, because that should drive how cultures are built. And that's true. That's the American experiment. And so it's fascinating to me during this polling season to see people wrangle over ideas. Voters are actually ingesting this stuff and they're processing.
Good.
And we're starting to see a pull away. And it seems to be like a last minute sort of pull away towards Trump. And I think Kamala is really helping him. So the best favor, I think, or I think the best asset that Trump has right now is Kamala. Every time she opens her mouth. I was explaining to Karen during the break, Nico, that there was this, and kudos to Anderson Cooper again.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like his politics at all, but I think he did a fantastic job. Generally speaking, he nailed it. There was an interesting discourse around groceries because groceries, I think, typify the average economic challenge that Americans are having today.
Right.
And he was bringing up an undecided voter who was asking about groceries, and she pledged to put a national ban on price gouging. Here we go again. Remember the price gouging thing? And so Cooper pulls out her plan. He actually pulls out her actual plan and begins to read from it. And he's saying, look, this intended ban on price gouging, and he reads from it, quote, it only affects essential goods during emergencies or times of crisis, end of quote. And so the question then becomes, well, how does that help Eric, the questioner, if he's having problems now with groceries? And then she goes, yeah, that's a real issue. Donald Trump should be here tonight to talk to you and answer your questions, but he's not. He refused to come. That's her answer.
Wow. Look, it's embarrassing.
Painful.
But it's painful. You're almost embarrassed for her, and then I'm in, and it's I don't understand. I really don't understand if people get out. Look, I had a buddy of mine sent me and another friend that false reporting that Trump disrespected that Hispanic and that was blatantly false.
An out lie.
An outright lie. But see, I told you. I was like, "What are you? This is a smart person. I mean, the person that sent me this is I'm not just being hyperbolic. One of the most intelligent people. He's just brilliant. But we all have blind spots, and I pray against my blind spots because I want to follow truth. And Scripture says in John 8, truth sets you free. So I'm a truth scavenger. I always tell people, the truth seeker. And whatever the truth is, I'm going to mold to it, and then I'm going to start championing it because it's the truth, and it's not my truth. It's the truth. It's exclusive. And so you see things like this. Some of the things that she says, one of the many things, aside from I grew up in a middle house, you already know it's a joke that when you're asked a question to her, you ask her a question, what her starting of the answer is going to be. And I get there's some of that in politics, but after a while, people start watching a couple of your interviews, unless you're doing none of them, like she's not. But this duality of democracy, what the hell does that mean? When it's doing good, it's great. When it's not, okay, got it. But when anything's doing good, it's great.
Or she can't answer questions because she has to do research first. Like,
everything should be done. You have people working for you. You should have your talking points. And look, you can't remember everything, or you should. Look, this is what she took a day and a half off of the campaign, which is insane to me. When you're in the sprint. When voting even before voting starts, you're sprinting. There's a marathon. I always tell people, campaigns are marathons. But at some point, you're doing a 100-yard dash. She's in the dash.
Trump did a 3-hour interview with Rogan and still flew to the rally. That didn't get there
crazy.
Until 10
I don't know how the
night.
guy keeps going, because if he's eating McDonald's,
what research?
I don't know what the hell he's doing.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that later.
Exactly what research is necessary to answer the question, how would you be any different than Joe Biden? What research do you need to do?
None. She has experience to that. She's in the room. She was last in the room, and she knows her ideas. She knows what she campaigned on before. She knew what she criticized Biden for, and then she saw the implementation of those ideas. You just say, I would have done this. Say anything. Say Afghan. Say anything.
A small adjustment if she would have done it.
Anything.
It would have helped her.
She goes, I can't. She told the ladies, those
The View.
terrible women at The View, I can't think of anything. And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
And then she comes back to platitudes. Well, I'm Joe Biden and I are different people, and I have different experiences. And I was a prosecutor. It's not cogent. And CNN literally turned on her. Every single one of those guys, from Van Jones to David Axelrod to Dana Bash, said that she's in trouble. She had nothing to offer. And the word salads are just not. They're just not going to move the needle.
They were trying so hard to defend her.
People are just tired of it.
Wow.
And so I think that there should be consequences for this. And we're seeing Donald Trump on more and more national polls. I feel like I'm having an out of body experience, Nico. Donald Trump 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 points ahead on national polling.
And why that's important, Karen, is because he was down 7 points on Hillary. Right? Is that where you're going, George?
Yeah, it was 8 points.
Okay.
It was 8 points with Biden and 5 points with Hillary. And as it turns out, the polling was off, and it was just a couple of percentage points. It was nowhere near that. I think with Biden it was 4 points, and with Clinton it was literally half that. So the polling's always been a little bit off. But the point is, they need to be ahead. There's typically go ahead.
No. I'm sorry. I want you to finish your thought. I'm just saying, did you notice or did you hear that Democrat candidates in some of these swing states are agreeing with Trump's ideas?
No, that's right.
So they're distancing again back to ideas. They're not saying I'm going to vote for Trump, but they're distancing themselves from the ideas that Harris has been
even the
on.
Washington Post said that they weren't going to endorse a candidate. I was like, wait.
And the LA Times. So I saw a piece. I don't remember where I saw it, but I thought it had the right tagline that there's a Democrat. What was it? It was a Democrat rebellion, I think is what they said, that was brewing, and that they're actually, you've got from pundits to politicians that are sort of aggregating around Trump's ideas at this point in the late stretch. as opposed to Kamala Harris. There should be consequences for this. I mean, this is a dire time in America. Can you imagine Kamala Harris in the Oval Office, truly at a time of legitimate emergency? This is a person who can't take a stand clearly on anything.
But that awkward laugh came back, not the cackle, but the laugh came back with CNN. And it's a nervous laugh. It's a filler. It's a filler laugh, like it's an oh crap laugh. And it's you just these questions. There's nothing laughable. I mean, and then Anderson, God bless you. And then Anderson, you saw him. He was stern. I mean, he was stoic. He wasn't laughing with the damn thing. He's like, well, what can you? I mean, I didn't see the whole thing. I know George did. But what I saw, you have to give Anderson Cooper credit. He was, I don't know if it's thinking, I got to regain my credibility as a journalist, or he's frustrated. Maybe he's thinking of his career.
Totally.
Maybe he's thinking of, okay, Trump's going to win and I'm going to look like a dumbass. I have no idea. I can't speak for him. That's between him and his conscience. But he did a good job. And that's what and if that had if that's been going on, if that is what had been happening this whole time, this would not even be close. If the media was not if the media was acting like the way the media is now, I mean, some of it, not all of it, CNN at least, this wouldn't even be close.
But now it's like a CYA for all of these people.
It appears to be that way. I don't know for sure. I can't. I'm not in their mind, but there's an argument for that at least, because you can't explain either that or she's so abysmal. I mean, that you can't defend the way she's relaying these ideas or lack thereof.
And it always keeps coming back to Trump's bad, Orange Man is bad. Nothing to say, but always go after Trump. I think this is a legit. I saw a piece on X by a guy by the name of Robert Sterling, and I think you guys ought to check him out, because I think he has her nailed right. It's called "The Trump Hitler Story is a PSYOP."
We only have like 20 seconds. I want this to be an entire segment, so will you please hold on to that for just a second?
Well, we need to talk about that Hitler allegations, because her campaign, and there must be some internal polling, because went from good vibes,
yes,
brat girl, joy, to the barn is burning down and Trump is Hitler. And so we'll talk about that.
We'll be right back. Cautious. You said there are so many signs that this is going in a positive direction. I felt that way the last election, and then suddenly everything changed when I went to sleep. I mean, people shouldn't just say Trump's going to win, I don't need to go vote. That could be the downfall to it all.
You have to be very careful. Look, Republicans are out voting in droves. Early voting, which is not normal.
Why doesn't anybody say that? You're the first person I've heard say that.
Well, I mean, it's the truth. I mean, someone said it to me, so I'm repeating it. So someone said it before me, but it's Republicans are voting, which means make sure you still vote on election day.
Right.
But number two,
right,
the only reason why they're saying that, you're looking at people how they voted before, how they're registered. So these are registered Republicans. What I don't think they have, unless they have exit polling, what they don't have a handle on, and maybe George has read something on this, is how many independents or Democrats went in and voted for Trump. I mean, I think there's going to be an undervote. I think there's going to be people that go in there and vote Democrat everywhere else and maybe vote for Trump, or just for Trump and walk out of there. I mean, I don't know. And that's why they're encouraging people to go all the way down the ballot, because you make sure that these ideas get voted in. But I'm curious to see how many of these disenchanted Democrats or fed up Democrats or blue dog Democrats that don't feel like they have a home, that haven't done what Tulsi, because Tulsi's a Republican now.
Yep.
That was a big deal. And Bobby hasn't done that yet, but Bobby's going to be working in the.
He hasn't, but he's on board. He's
absolutely
on board.
But all I'm saying is, and then independence. We don't have. I don't know, George. Do we have any?
No, we don't. I mean, this is mostly anecdotal. What we have is we have registered Democrats. We have the total number of, registered Democrats that are voting versus the total number of registered Republicans that are voting, and then we can compare. And on aggregate, in terms of the mail-in balloting, Democrats are on aggregate nationally. They're ahead of Republicans. I'm not really concerned about that, really, because compared to 2020, it's not even close.
Yeah.
That's the point. Of course, 2020 was the pandemic, so understandably so. But we're seeing numbers nowhere near 2020, but they're higher than 2016 in terms of the number of people that are early voting. The Dallas Express had a great article that I think gives some insight into this, is that we're seeing more early in-person voting by Republicans than we've ever seen.
Yeah.
And there's something like 18 million votes cast.
But that doesn't mean don't go vote on election day.
Right,
Correct.
right.
And I'm focusing on Texas right now. It's kind of a microcosm. It's a big state, lots of electoral votes. And so it matters what's going on here, it seems to me. But yeah, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a huge upsurge in Republican early voting. And I think that's going to bode well. But it's the polling that we shouldn't be seeing that we are seeing again on a national level, that Trump is tied or ahead. Typically, Democrats have needed to have a 2 to 3 point lead on a national vote to win in the Electoral College. And of course, the presidential election is all about the Electoral College. That's gone. The Real Clear Politics average on Wednesday reported that across their aggregate of polls, something like 12 to 13 polls, they reported that about 3 weeks ago, there was something like a 2.1% lead for Kamala Harris. Now Trump's ahead by 1.6.
That's a big deal, Karen.
That's a nearly 4-point swing. 1.8. That's nearly a 4-point swing for Trump. That's incredible. And so it seems to me that if that keeps up, it's reasonable to conclude that he's going to be over 300 electoral votes. That seems reasonable to me.
But George, let me ask you this: who the hell is doing these polls? When anybody calls my ass, I don't even want to respond to them.
Yep.
I don't respond to anything.
I don't
know. And if someone says political call, I don't answer it.
No.
And then they send me these texts, 10,000 texts a day.
Oh my God!
I don't respond to them. I erase them and delete them and report
But then
them to
I also
junk.
think that when
answers
they
these
call
polls?
Democrats, they're louder than Republicans. I think Republicans were like, I'm not going to answer this. This
don't
is messed
get
up.
it.
And I think Democrats are like, yes, we're with her.
I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. To me, polling is interesting. It's not like in the old days where you call, you dial, and this, and because nobody. I mean, I don't do it, but maybe I'm.
Yeah, I can see what
outlier.
people would say. Remember, it's a representative sample, and so it
Well, that's why
It's meant-
rallies. That's why rallies are
You're so right.
are kind of a poll to me.
You're
I mean, how
so
can you
right.
ignore that? Because you're talking. Not only is someone answering a question, they're physically going out of their way to go somewhere.
Standing in line.
I mean, that I don't understand how you can't look at rallies as that. I mean, and I know we're going to talk about the McDonald's thing, whatever time we have left, and just going into the barbershops and doing all these podcasts because people are taking the time to watch. Now, they could be detractors. I get that. But the rallies, you can't ignore that. That is actual polling to me. Am I wrong?
no, I think, but
But wait a second, the rallies, I have to say one thing, because one rally that had a lot of people for Kamala Harris also had Bruce Springsteen, Beyonce, Mark Cuban. Those are the rallies that get the most people.
The star-studded rallies. Traditionally, there's been, and you know this, there's been no indication of a direct tie between rally attendance and how people vote on voting day. But Trump's an anomaly in that regard, Nico, because he doesn't just go to friendly places. He goes everywhere.
I'm not saying that there's a direct tie, even though I can't imagine there's not a direct tie. Maybe someone just hasn't looked for it. Because someone's going to I've never been to a rally like that.
Me neither. I wish.
And I vote. I mean, I'm just telling you, because I've made up my mind. I don't need to go to a rally. But I mean, or maybe a rally isn't for that reason. There are people there to support you, and I get that. And I've had rallies in campaigns when I've run. And so it's important. I'm going to go to a kind of a gathering, a rally for my brother on the 30th. That Governor Abbott will be there, just kind of a get out the vote rally. So I get all that. But I'm just saying it still means something. It's a sample of support from that region or that area. That's what I'm saying.
Well, first of all, we haven't seen rallies like we've seen in the age of Trump. But we also see that he's pulling those numbers regardless of where he goes. And that's what tells us something, that this is pretty distributed, really. Wherever he goes across the country. I mean, he even goes in blue states, for goodness sakes, and he pulls those kinds of numbers. That says something. But it's not, obviously that's not a scientific poll. You're not canceling out any kind of bias, which is the point of having a random poll. Technically, a random poll should distribute that error randomly across the entire sample so that you're not inappropriately biasing one over the other. But there is this worry that you're talking about, and we don't know right now. Have we corrected for those errors from before? This sort of 3 to 5% error in the unknown Trump support vote? Have we corrected for that? What if we've overcorrected? That's a concern that I have.
What does that mean?
In other words, pollsters are so concerned about the mistakes that they made in 2020, and especially in 2016, in underrepresenting Trump voters. Remember, we just said, Nico pointed out, that between Joe Biden in 2020 and Hillary Clinton in 2016, they had leads of 5 and 8 points, or 8 and 5 points respectively. But that's not what actually happened. I mean, Biden's lead was actually half that. So there is a 3 to 4% error in those numbers, and pollsters are worried that they've either not done enough to correct it, or in some sense have overcorrected for it because they're so sensitive to it. That's the unknown right now. We just don't know. But still, all of that considering, we've never seen Donald Trump being ahead. His favorable to unfavorable ratio is positive for the first time ever in his political career.
There's some dude that has never lost a prediction on an election. I don't remember his name. What's that guy say? And we'll talk about that on the after show, because I think I want to talk about, before we wind up, I want to talk about that McDonald's.
Please.
I mean, that was a bit.
How did that turn out to be the most brilliant idea ever?
That's what the guy does, man. I mean, and it was endearing to him. Look, I have a buddy of mine. I always bring him up without saying his name, who is just a traditional conservative and a Republican, and he couldn't stand Trump. I think the last time he didn't vote at all, just left that rate out, which we got into that discussion about that, and he voted for him this time. And then when he talks about him, he didn't hold his nose. He didn't hold his nose, and that's the thing we talk about. You know, and the thing that he analyzes. You know, when Trump challenged something in the courts, and the courts came back with a ruling, he never disobeyed court orders. Biden does. I mean, Trump's a man of order. Believe it or not, he might be crazy. He might be a gunslinger and all the stuff you want to criticize. Some people love that. Some people don't. I'm in the middle. I think there's a need for a gunslinger, and there's a need for someone that's disciplined. I try to be disciplined. But Trump understands the rule of law. And regardless of what people say, he left the White House. I mean, the idea of questioning an election and results and election integrity, that's nothing new. I mean, the way that the left has spun this around, when you look at Hillary and Tracy Abrams and all the other Democrats that have questioned elections, that's just the way the system works. And now you can criticize January 6th and whether he should have shown up to the rally, but you know he didn't say anything wrong because he would have been prosecuted for it, and we have a transcript. George loves transcripts. Read the transcript. We know what he said. And some people went over the line, and they should be held accountable, the ones that did things wrong. So, I mean, but he's a man of order, and he believes in the rule of law. And so when you put all that together and you see what he's done already, 4 years, I mean, you don't have to like his personality. You don't have to like the Republican Party. Just, do you like the effect it's had on your life? Do you like the last 4 years on your life or the 4 years previous to that? So you have an 8-year window. You have a true horse race, a neck-to-neck, because Harris is Biden, whether she likes it or not, and she hasn't distanced herself from him. She can't say what she would do differently. You have to vote on ideas. And not just there, but everywhere else, because what I'm seeing and this is me, who's been involved in politics pretty intensely here, is the Democrats don't have any permission to stray. You don't have permission. You cannot think independent. We are not going to be inclusive. If you don't have these 6 policies and these 6 ideologies, and not even and as intense as we want you to be on them, whether it's abortion or this or whatever it is, or transgender issues or men and women's sports or this, and I can't tell you how many Democrats I've spoken to, people in office, that whisper disagreement with their platform, but they don't publicly. They can't.
But doesn't that sound closer to
fascism?
Hitler's
Yes,
Nazis?
we can talk about that after. And if people don't understand what fascism means, and so yes, it does. And so on the Republican side, you can disagree, you can have debate, because we're the champions now of free speech and First Amendment and anti-censorship and liberty and free thought and free expression and and all that stuff. So I don't. To me, it's a clear choice because the platforms are not anywhere close. It's not as if there's a 20% difference. Like I told you, and we'll end with this as we get ready for the after show. When I was running under the Democrat platform and I was running for DA, I had a old school friend. An old family friend, who's a staunch Republican, that says, "I'm support you. I'm gonna be public about it." And I said, "Are you sure? You don't have to." And he's like, "I know you, and I know your family. I'm not gonna be afraid of. I know who you are." And he goes, "You know what? In the old days, Nico, the Republic. If you look at a football field, the Republicans started on their 40-yard line, and the Democrats started on their 40-yard lines, and we were really just fighting over the 20 yards in the middle. We weren't that off. And when you look at the old speeches, as I mentioned before, you can see what he's talking about. You can see the old school JFK. JFK would be a Republican today. Bobby Kennedy, all that stuff. So you look at those examples, and he was right. We were just fighting over the 20 yards. Now, as I've added to that example, the Democrats start on their goal line, and the Republicans start on their goal line, and we're fighting over everything. And so that's the issue. It's really a decision on ideas. I pray that people are diligent about that and really think about how it affects them, their neighbors, and ultimately this country surviving a very challenging time in our history. So join us on the after show. We're going to stay on for another 30.
SidebarTV.com to follow us on the different platforms.
And we'll see you on the after show. Have a blessed weekend. Thank you.
The preceding show was paid for by the LaHood Norton Law Group. The views and opinions expressed are those of the advertiser and do not necessarily.
So now do we get to talk about the Nazis and Hitler? No, I really, the reason that I feel pain when I hear those words coming out of people's mouths because one, what happened with the Nazis and Hitler is so heartbreaking and devastating. I think, how could they pick that person and then talk about Trump at the same time?
Because if we've talked about this before and others have too, if you believe that he's Hitler, then what wouldn't you do to stop Hitler? There's a moral question that we talk about when George and I teach, and we're talking about ethics and morals and Christianity and things of this nature. If you knew Hitler as a baby and you knew Hitler was going to turn into Hitler, would you be morally justified to kill that baby? Think about that.
I know.
Now, there's a different question, a philosophical question. Well, can I be involved in trying to change Hitler's path? Are you saying that Hitler was predestined to be Hitler? That there's nothing in his path that determined him to be the adult Hitler that he was and the evil bastard that he was? And then that's predetermination, and that's a different argument, Calvinism and all that stuff. And George and I have a very different opinion on that. We believe in the free agency, and the scripture is very clear about that. But then, so if you're asking me, I would say, well, hold on. Are you saying that it's predetermined, or are you saying that can I get involved? But all I'm saying is, I'm using that as an example. I wasn't trying to get you to get too deep here, because you're looking at me like I'm crazy.
I am. No, but I get what you're.
But you understand
what
what I'm saying? I'm just saying, if you label him Hitler, what wouldn't you do? to stop Hitler from doing
I know,
the
but
evil
isn't
that
that
he
the
did.
free for all? Let's kill him. I mean,
No, I think that's
to
right.
me exactly what it is.
I do. I happen to believe that. I actually texted, Nico and I were texting this week, and I said, I think these guys are really trying to encourage a third assassination
That's what it
attempt on
feels
Trump.
like.
I think they do. And this kind of began this week with a very irresponsible piece in The Atlantic. It was just completely libelous, and it was immediately discredited by anybody who was familiar with the circumstances that they were describing, making the claim that a former military young woman by the name of Vanessa Gillen, who happened to be Hispanic, and the rumor is that Trump was approached about paying for her funeral, to which he agreed. But then he was later told that the tab was going to be, this is back in 2020. This is the story, that he was approached with paying for her funeral, and that he agreed at a high level. But then he was told that the cost was going to be around $60,000, and then that he was pissed, and that theoretically said, "Are you kidding me? It doesn't cost $60,000 to bury a fucking Mexican." That's what they're saying. And
That's what he said, or they're saying that's
they're saying that's what he said.
That's okay. That's the claim.
That's what
the
they're
indictment.
saying that he said. That's the claim, which is, and so, translation, this is the tagline, that Trump has a disdain for the military, and that he wants generals like Hitler had around him that will basically be his private army and do whatever the hell he wants to do. That's the claim. This is in The Atlantic. The New York Times had a similar claim. And so, does anyone really read those magazines? Now, compared to podcasts, compared to social media, the answer is no. But what happens is that those things are taken up by other magazines, other publications, other media.
Yeah.
It's a snowball
And so it
effect.
begins.
It's a snowball
That's
effect.
exactly
Right.
right. And it becomes a kind of rhetorical suicide bomb against Trump. That's the point. And I think, and I like what Robert Sterling said, because I think that that's how this shakes out. This is a psyop. It delivers a payload. Every psyop delivers a payload, and that payload is rather nuclear in terms of its effect, because of the insanity of what you're saying. If Trump is actually Hitler, to your point, what wouldn't you do to stop him? If somebody could have stopped Adolf Hitler in World War II, and it's argued, if you study history, he becomes Chancellor of Germany at the tail end of January. Chancellor of Germany is a kind of prime minister of Germany. He ascends to power. And there were all kinds of signs. I mean, the guy had written an effing book, for goodness sakes, Mein Kampf. He was pretty clear in Mein Kampf on the kinds of things he planned to do. So one could argue, if somebody came forward ahead of him becoming Chancellor of Germany, and would have taken him out, a true hero, right? The amount of human life that would have been spared. And so that's the analogy they're trying to draw today. So yeah, Karen, I think that this is a not so subtle way of encouraging someone to take him out. And this is outrageous. And then you had John Kelly, and this came up in the CNN town hall.
The general?
John Kelly worked for Trump for about 2 years. First few months, he was Department of Homeland Security head, and then he became Trump's chief of staff. And by the way, he actually said that during Rogan. He said, "Man, if it's a mistake that I made, it's that I really hired a bunch of shitty people that kind of helped do me in." And John Kelly was recently on a CNN conversation, some sort of CNN-related event, where he basically stated they had conversations with Trump, where Trump seemed to express certain affections for Hitler. Hitler did a lot of things right, or did some things right. And then Kelly corrected him and said, actually, no, he was a radical racist, hyper-nationalist, and his ideas led to obviously mass destruction of human life. I don't think you should ever say that, Mr. President. And so they asked him, well, how did the argument end? How did that argument end? And he says, well, it just kind of sort of changed the subject. And so a bunch of people have come out and said, look, I worked for John Kelly. Mark Meadows has come out and said, as chief of staff, I was there when, during the circumstances that the Atlantic is describing. He said nothing of the sort. In fact, he was nothing but gracious in terms of paying for the expenses for that funeral. Nothing but gracious to the family.
That's a different claim. So you're claiming this is not an out of context conversation, which is one of the theories of our trial. But you're saying this is an outright lie.
Correct. And so Mark Meadows comes out and said, this is absolute bullshit. The sister of Vanessa Gillen, Myra, has come out and said, this is complete nonsense.
Donald Trump has been nothing but gracious to our family. And by the way, I just voted for him today.
Wow.
The attorney for the family has come forth and said, never have I seen this level of mislead
Wow.
in the media.
That's big.
And so one after another, just completely blowing this apart. But here's the point: is the damage done? And that's all they care about. This is how Marxism works in politics.
Wow.
This is what communism is. Communism is basically the implementation of Marxist theory. And these are how communists work. And in this country, Nico, it's going to come down to these battleground states. And so a PSYOP could prove very effective. It could. Do I think it's going to work? I don't, because people know Donald Trump. He's a known entity. And this bullshit's been out there from day one. And everybody remembers his 4 years in the White House. And there's nothing fascistic about that.
Well, explain what fascism is, because people keep bastardizing that and they overuse the term. Explain what that is so people can understand a groundwork of what we're talking about.
Fascism is authoritarianism on steroids, and it is the ready use of military and police force to implement whatever you want in a society, and it strikes fear in the hearts of people, because if you're not aligned, you could in fact be arrested and disappeared. So fascism it's basically the implementation of government policy through violence, if necessary. The national government governs, and dissent is crushed at every measure. And so the idea that Donald Trump is that, I mean, who has been crushing dissent?
The Democrats.
Is it Trump?
No.
I mean, who was insisting, who was trying, thank God for the United States Supreme Court in the aftermath of Biden's inauguration, who was trying to implement vaccine mandates across the country?
Yeah.
Across employers, threatening people with losing their livelihoods?
Mass shutting down your business.
Really sort of doing this through weaponization of OSHA. Remember that? The United States Supreme Court had to step in and say, I think not. Who's doing that?
Yeah.
That's not Trump. Who's been weaponizing the Department of Justice against dissenting voices across the country? From parents pushing back on school boards that are out of control authoritarianisms to the little sisters of the poor. Remember that during the Obama administration? Who's doing that? Who's going after sidewalk counselors in front of abortion clinics? Is that Trump? Who is out there right now saying that she doesn't think there should be religious exemptions for abortion? Is that Trump? That's Kamala. So this is, again, Nico, if they're bitching about it, they're doing it.
Yeah.
This is mass projection. Voters have caught on. They know what Trump was like during those 4 years.
That's why the importance and the power of these podcasts has been, because you don't have these restrictions on these. I mean, Trump has been doing everything. He did a podcast. I didn't watch it yet. I mean, I'm just curious now out of everything with The Undertaker. Did you see that, Saulo? With The Undertaker.
I heard that
he did a podcast with the damn wrestler,
Yes,
The Undertaker.
yes.
I mean, he's been on
Everywhere
Vaughn,
and anywhere.
that Theo Vaughn a while back. That was a big podcast. He went on. I mean, everybody.
JD Vance is doing the same thing.
Well, JD Vance was on with Cuomo.
Oh yeah.
They did a town hall with Cuomo.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just going. They are sprinting. That is a wonderful example of how to sprint. And I've been critical of Trump. You know that, and so has George. But he's been disciplined. I mean, I'm an hour and a half into the Joe Rogan one. I'm going to watch the rest of it, and it's a conversation. I've had some comments of my friends of mine and my brother said, I wish Joe would have pressed him a little harder, but it was still very good. I don't know what he means by that, but I mean, I'm an hour and a half in. They're having this conversation, talking about aliens. They're talking about everything, Ukraine, this, that. And even when he starts, because man, that's a long weave. You got, because, talk about the weave, how he goes out there and he weaves back. And he goes, that's a long weave. You got a wide weave. And so it was just, so far it's been good.
I'm glad you brought that up. I would like to understand what that means. You said
know.
Mark said this?
Mark said that.
Yeah, I'd like to understand, because Mark's pretty thoughtful. He has an answer for that, I'm sure. But I mean, at one point, they were talking about, I mean, why do you get this kind of intensity from the media? I mean, from day one, because he was talking, I hired some shitty people. And man, it was an onslaught from day one, Trump said. I never had a moment's peace. And then Trump actually asked Rogan and said, "What do you think that is?"
What do you think? What is?
In terms of the flack that I get from the media, I mean, it's constant. Day one, and and Rogan said, well, because you say some weird shit.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to say, I mean, but Rogan basically said, look, you're out there saying you're out there saying what people are thinking. You're not massaging. You're not running this through focus groups. Those are my words. Basically, you're not sort of rehearsed. You're saying what's on your mind about issues that people care about, and so naturally you're going to be pushing back against the generally accepted narrative, and you're going to get hell. And in fact, hell he's gotten.
I thought Joe did on this one part. He's talking about Joy Behar, The View, and Whoopi. And he says, have you seen that episode? Oh, yeah, they love me. Well, I go see Joy somewhere and I'm at a thing. And when you come on the show again, you're on the show. Donald, we love you. And he's talking about that. And then Rogan goes, and he's dropping F-bombs or anything. He goes, it's crazy. This batshit crazy. I mean, the fact that they loved you. What happened? I got serious. I mean, I'm not part of, I don't remember Joe. I don't remember Trump's answer to that. But he brought out this absolute hypocrisy from Oprah's last show to all these people. What's changed? This guy's been talking the same this whole time.
I talk about Whoopi Goldberg the same way. I mean, she used to love me. I mean, I remember when I gave to Democrat causes. I was Democrat for a lot of my
Jackson's campaign. Ran for president. Jesse Jackson. Thank you. I was thinking Alan Jackson. Sorry. I mean, Jesse Jackson. I mean, he supported his campaign. Yeah. I mean, this is to make these claims are ill-founded. I mean, they're weak because he has decades of supporting different causes, different people, and he even said you were a Democrat. They talked about being a Democrat, and he talked about fiscally versus socially, what I've seen so far, it seems like.
And then even when he was talking about environmentalism, I love how they're talking about RFK. I love that part where they were exchanging about RFK, and he's like, I'm so glad. Rogan said, I'm so glad you guys are working together. This MAGA thing.
You like him?
I love
Trump.
You like Bobby. You like Bobby. You like everyone likes Bobby. You like Bobby. He's a great guy.
He's like, I'm not jealous, but you like him.
Yeah. You like Bobby.
Yeah, I thought it was a great exchange, and then and he says, "I really doesn't really agree with you on fossil fuels. Yeah, I got to keep away. I got to keep away from fossil fuels."
But that's real.
I
love
that.
He said that's a real conversation.
It got better because he continued. He goes, "Man, I bet you." Because Rogan said, "I bet you're catching some flack for bringing him on." He goes, "That's an understatement." And Trump said, "Yeah, I'm catching hell. I'm catching hell from bringing him on. That's a total understatement." And then he was open about it. He goes, "Big pharma." And he said, but
they're shit in their pants, man.
And when it comes to, but he says he's a really smart guy, and the stuff that he's saying makes sense. And so in terms of his health initiatives, he goes, I'm gonna get a lot of slack. I'm letting him do whatever he wants to do. But I mean, I like liquid oil. I like it. We need it, And so but he's real. He goes, we differ on that. We have different opinions on that, but we found common ground. Is this not? How is that fascistic? I mean, I swear it makes me nauseous when I hear this chick talk about January 6th and calling him an insurrectionist. I'm sorry, it's falling dead with voters. People remember, what do you like to say, Nico? Somebody who sounded just like her and looked just like her was out there in 2020 saying how much she loved those violent demonstrators, BLM and Antifa.
Well, she was raising bond money for them.
Oh, yeah. Let's see, 35 killed, $2 billion in damage, 1,500 law enforcement officers injured, 14,000 arrested. Right. And so where does that unrest fall? That's not Trump. How is that Trump? And she's out there saying this shouldn't stop. This is a great idea. Who the hell's the insurrectionist now? And she's out there arguing for bailing out the ones who were jailed. She's the insurrectionist. She is the face of fascism.
When she starts yelling now,
and voters have caught on.
Really scary. It's scary like it is Biden scary. When she starts the screaming and yelling, it's like, ooh. Well,
that's why I'm so passionate about our justice system. Our justice system has to be the last safeguard against this.
Yeah.
It has to. And remember years ago, Karen, on the show, when I said if this starts trickling into our justice system, if Lady Justice starts pulling up the blindfold and doing this, if Lady Justice takes off the blindfold and puts a mesh one on, then we're in trouble. And you better pull up your pants and get ready for a fight, because the justice system is our last safeguard, a system of the people, by the people, truly for the people. And you start tweaking with that, and shit gets serious quick. And so that's why I'm so passionate about it. Whether I was a district attorney, a prosecutor, or a defense attorney, you need honorable people on both sides. And you need the system set up in a way that it will serve the people well. And you can make that argument for the government also. And the government's gone so far off the reservation about our founding principles, what our founding fathers believed in, this idea of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and what that means, and how that's implemented to attain that. We've gone off the reservation for that.
David, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask again. I mean, voters remember. They remember, and it's working against her. I mean, they know this idea of Trump coming in there and turning the government from the military Department of Justice into his personal black-booted police force. It's nonsense. I mean, or jack-booted police force. Who's known for doing that? I mean, who weaponized the CIA and the FBI to interfere in the 2016 election? Remember the Steele dossier? 51 intelligence officials, my ass, that the Hunter laptop is Russian disinformation. Who did that? Who truly interfered in the election? And yet they dared have the nuts to impeach him for it. So they did it, but they impeached him for it. People have caught on, and it's showing up. Trump's ahead in Pennsylvania.
Huge.
That's hard to
Trump's
even
ahead.
believe.
Trump's ahead.
huge,
Yeah, Trump's ahead in Michigan,
Georgia,
in Georgia, in Arizona,
Michigan,
in North Carolina,
in Michigan.
Yeah,
Yes.
I can't believe it.
Not in every poll, but the fact that he's
Well, if he's in the ballpark, I mean, that
Oh,
tells
no,
you where he's
uh,
at. I mean, that tells you what it's in
it's
play.
unquestionable.
It's in play, is it not?
it is absolutely
And he's going for it.
And
I mean,
he should.
he's going for all the. And then aren't they going to do something in Madison Square Garden, in New York?
Yeah.
When is that?
I mean,
Salo?
that crazy
Tomorrow.
That
Coming
crazy some bitch is going after. He doesn't want
Tomorrow.
to. I think it's a pride thing with him. He wants New York. He wants New York. I mean,
Well, somebody said that
that's
if you
his
are
own-
working at that level, there's got to be this ego that drives you.
Oh, it has to.
And you win because of it. So, yeah.
Okay, just to be clear, I don't think he's going to win New York, but that's not what matters.
Really? Why?
I don't. But he will in a sense.
Didn't Zealous almost win?
But he will in a sense.
Okay.
He will in a sense. Because if you look at the number of voters that are breaking for Trump in New York versus the numbers that have broken for Trump traditionally or for Republican, I mean, he's making 10 to 15% inroads. A 10 to 15% improvement in New York
So huge.
is incredible. And so I think that if you take that kind of enthusiasm, this is why my contention is, and Nico's heard this same thing, he's peeling Democrats. And it's not, or Democrat-leaning independents, Democrats. New York is not known for independency, okay? New York is known for hardcore pro-Democrat voters. And for Trump to be peeling those people off, I think this really says a lot
but
for the kinds of things we can expect
Giuliani
at
was
the ballot
Republican,
box.
wasn't he? When he was New York voted a mayor and a Republican mayor.
In New York City.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It gets
It
more
can happen.
conservative outside of that. If New York City votes in a Republican mayor, then you know that the surrounding.
It can happen.
Yeah, I was focusing particularly on presidential elections.
Well, I know. I'm just
in terms
talking
of
about.
voters. The potential's there for
Yeah,
sanity.
then-
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
in New York
maybe
City.
not anymore. You got so many illegals there. I mean, who knows? But I'm just
No, I
saying.
think that's fair, and even in New York City,
Yeah.
because it's such a populist or populated voting bloc. And again, this psyop is really targeting the swing states. That's what I think. She knows that she's going to get buckets of voters in California. She knows she's going to get her buckets of voters in Pennsylvania. Yes, even Philadelphia.
This is an electoral
In
college. What
Philadelphia.
does it matter? But the thing that got me thinking, George, I think I brought it up to you after R rated on Thursday, or maybe I didn't. I was so tired that night. I was exhausted, man. Karen, I don't know if you saw it. I mean, I was
probably
exhausted.
asleep
You were
by
tired,
8.
dude.
I mean, I had not slept for a week and a half. Literally, I was going on 3-4 hours of sleep a night, in preparation for trial, in trial, bell to bell, still getting my workouts in the morning. I was like, I felt like, oh, I'm tired as shit.
I haven't seen you that tired in a long time.
Man,
I'm gonna go
that's
back
what
and
I-
watch it.
Well, don't do that now. Forget about it. But I asked you that. I thought I mentioned, and I asked you about that. Trump is actually up in the popular vote,
That is
not just
Correct.
That's big.
the electoral college.
That's correct.
That's crazy.
No, that's correct. If you look at the latest New York Times CNN poll, he is indeed that's outrageous.
That's crazy.
And if you go back to the beginning, not the beginning. This is the last. I think this is the last national poll they're going to do. But if you look at the results in early October, he was down by 4. And
That's why the Joe Rogan podcast is such a big deal. It really is. I mean, what is it now? I bet it's changed about 500,000 views in just an hour and a half we've been here. I mean, it's insane. And Joe's got influence. And if this election is really that razor, I mean, these guys are leaving nothing on the table.
That's right. And so he's ahead in a lot, not all, of the national polls. But there's a breakdown. There's a piece right now. I'd encourage people to read it. I like it because it's fresh. These things are changing every day, and you don't know what to believe. It's on Newsmax, and it's called "State of the Race: How Battleground Polls See Trump-Harris," and it's fantastic.
The way you're going to show people, no one can see that. I don't know why you always do that.
Well, I don't know.
He always does that as if Saulo's going to zoom in.
See it.
Nobody can see that shit. Oh, there you go, Saulo. Well, at least honor him. There you go.
Look at that shit.
There you go.
Can you see that shit now?
Sorry, you got it. Why you got to act like Saulo?
All right. You got that, Sally? Now you know I wasn't making it up.
Well, no one thought you were. What does it say?
So what they do is they break this down by state. So Arizona, Trump appears to be polling well in the state. He lost by just 10,457 votes. That's why it matters. She knows every single vote count. If you can convince people that are on the fence that Trump is in fact Hitler, or that he has at least fascistic tendencies, that could make a difference. Yep. This PSYOP is directed at swing states. So in Arizona, Trump leads 48-46, and it's a Telegraph poll. And I really like the Telegraph magazine. I like them. They're a publication think tank out of the UK, excuse me. And I think they do a really good job of having, sort of a nice, even political mix in terms of opinion. And they have come out this week and said that relative to where they were 30 days ago, it's their conviction that Trump's going to win. And they're obviously citing polling data. But here, Arizona, he's ahead. In Georgia, he holds a 1-point lead. In Georgia, Michigan, it says that I think this is crazy, but it says that Harris is ahead. A poll released Wednesday showed Harris ahead 49-46. 2 weeks after a similar poll by the group showed Trump leading 50-47. So Michigan's sort of an unknown, but the fact that he's even that close is crazy. Trump is ahead in Nevada. Trump is ahead in North Carolina. Trump is ahead in Pennsylvania, 49-48, according to Franklin and Marshall College and Emerson polls. They're citing 2 polls citing that Trump is ahead in every single one of these swing states with the exception of one. The fact that he's within 2 points in Wisconsin, I think there's lots of reasons to be
the margin of error, by the way.
Indeed. So, I think that if Trump keeps doing what he's doing and keeps up the intensity, and literally every single person's got to vote. Man. I mean, we can't leave anything to spare.
And keep trying to encourage people. Just keep encouraging them, educate them, have conversations, don't avoid it. I mean, I'm seeing more churches talking about politics. Right, I was honored to be asked to preach last week at Promise Church. George went out there to support small church, Pastor Gabe, but he wanted me to talk about navigating politics through the church. And George, as you know, I brought it down to the root word of politics, politique and polity.
Yes.
I mean, I think some people thought it was going to be some Trump rally. That wasn't the point. The point is, what's the ideology and what are the ideas that we're supposed to lay out before us before we support a platform? Because a platform is just an opportunity for ideas to be expressed. That's all it is. I mean, that's what political parties are. I challenged the church that we tribalize ourselves over an elephant and a donkey when we should, as Christians, should be elevating the lamb, right? The Lamb of God. That's my political party. Now, whether the elephant or whichever elephant or donkey, whichever one, the elephant or the donkey supports the lamb, I'm in. Mm-hmm. And it's not just the Christian, the atheist does that, the Islamic person does that, the Hindu, the Buddhist. Every ideology, religion, worldview will navigate towards the platform that supports their ideas. So that's not unreasonable for the Christian or the Christian pastor to be leading people towards a platform that supports a biblical idea. So what I did was, I didn't tell anybody to vote Republican or Democrat. If they would have asked me, I would have. But I went down to the root word of politics, and I made a distinction between partisanship and politics. And we broke down, George and I do, and we've done it on R-Rated, we break down politique, a set of ideas advocated by a polity, a group of people to affect the lives of others. That's a true, good working definition of politics. A set of ideas advocated by a group of people to affect the lives of others. Well, hell, what does that sound like? Matthew 28:19. The last thing Christ told us as he's ascending to heaven. He could have said anything. He could have, but he inherently gave a political charge, not a partisan charge, a political charge. Go into all nations, making disciples of all men, teaching them to obey all that I've commanded, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son. Go into all nations, right? And encourage people to do things the way I'm doing it. This is a set of ideas advocated by Christians, a group of people to affect the lives of others, teaching them to obey all that I've commanded. Well, Paul doubles down on that on 2 Timothy 2-4. 2 Timothy 4, 2 through 4. He says, in season and out of season, encourage, correct, and rebuke with great patience and careful instruction. What are you encouraging them? What are you correcting, encouraging, rebuking? Bad ideas. Bad ideas lead to bad living. And so what I challenge the church is the church, since we're called in 2 Corinthians 5 to be ambassadors for Christ, meaning to represent the home country in a foreign land. If we're called to do that, it's a political charge, right? That's an ideas-based charge. Advocate and represent the ideas of heaven. That's what we're called to do. And so if we're called to do that, and in Philippians 3:20 says that our citizenship is not here, but it's in heaven. Mm-hmm. This is just a temporary stay for us. If we truly are persuaded by that, how are we not supposed to persuade people towards a biblical understanding, which means biblical living, means biblical voting, a Christian worldview? We're supposed to do that. And we are called to be political, not partisan. Look, if I vote Republican now, I just do because that supports the biblical ideas that I am fully persuaded of. That's just as simple as that. It wasn't hard to vote in the Republican circles, Democrat circles in the old days because they weren't far off. When you really think about it. Now, the only time I say that suspends is when it comes to courthouse judgeships, because many of them, there's some Democrat judges that are excellent. They are. Now, but it still is a shame is on this ballot, there's no opposition on the Democrat. Because the Republican Party said, well, shit, we're not going to win anyway. Well, how do you know that? You still have to.
I saw that.
You have to mount. Now, look. You ask me which Democrat judges that I'm going to vote for. I'm going to tell you. At some point, because I see the effects of them in court. I know what they do, and I know how they believe and they think. And some of them worked with me or for me or whatever when I was in office. So that's a different ballgame. And you can disagree with me all you want on that, but I know the ideas that they play into our justice.
You said a lot.
And I did, brother. Sorry, you got
a
me
lot
started.
of important stuff because I want to tie it back to Christians and voting. And I just want to be very direct about this because it's not even close. If you are a Christian and you care about the direction of the country, a real Christian, a Christian who knows his or her Bible, a Bible being God's inspired authoritative word, an extension of his character, according to 2 Timothy 3:16, 2 Timothy 2:15 and 16. And let me just say this is really important. It's not even close. It's at least at the federal level. Every Christian should be voting for Donald Trump. It's not even close. On the issues of life, on the issues of personal freedoms and personal liberties, the ability to make decisions for yourself and your family, the ability to worship, the ability to talk openly about your faith, secure borders, to manage and secure the integrity of the country. A country is not a country if it doesn't have language, borders, and its culture. Yes, yeah. A culture is how we do things, how we conduct business. And how we do things is ultimately a function of the constitutional order of the United States. People who come into this country, who don't assimilate, break the nation's laws coming in, by definition, don't give a shit about our constitutional order. And we have on the other side a party that doesn't miss an opportunity to shoot down, humiliate, otherwise impugn Christianity. We've seen that over and over and over again, particularly out of the Biden Department of Justice on issues of life. We've seen it over and over again. We know how this administration is not handling the border and how they're literally erasing the American voter. We see that. An administration that actually gets in the way whenever people step in to try to preserve the rule of law. This is not even close. I really don't give a shit about the fact that Trump's on his third marriage. He's not up for elder of the local church.
Well, you
Okay?
do care, but you do give a shit, but
not as it pertains
right. Yes, okay.
to this election,
yes.
because to Nico's point,
Yes.
it's politics. Trump and the Republican Party, of which he is head. Yes, I know. If you're a Trump hater, it's tough to digest that, but it's true. That political party has organized itself around ideas that will further the Christian cause. That's how you ought to think about it. At the end of the day, that's why his third marriage doesn't matter. Trump's been in office for 4 years. We know how he makes decisions on these critical issues. They are decidedly aligned with Christian concerns. This, Nico, is a no-brainer.
But I don't understand. So what are you going to do? You're going to vote for Harris, who, I mean, didn't she date Willie Brown? Downtown Willie Brown? No? The mayor?
Yep.
Right? The mayor.
Well,
he was married.
married.
Yep.
He was a very interesting character.
What's the other guy that used to do the
Montel Williams?
Montel.
Yeah, he was a second
married
girlfriend.
Yep. I mean, if we're gonna get into the moral discussion, I got it. I mean, I'm not saying he's a look. I'll say this. I said it on last week's show. I don't think Trump is saved. I don't think he's a regenerate Christian. I don't. I think he adheres to biblical ideas. I think he's interested. I think he's closer. I think he believes in God. I have no doubt about it.
Yep.
But I do not believe he has had a salvific experience with Christ, which shocks me after surviving that. But that's between him and God. But he advocates. I mean, look at Nebuchadnezzar. We can go through the scriptures. I mean, Moses spoke truth to power. Daniel, Isaiah, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I mean, Jeremiah. There's a female in there. Esther. I mean, there's a
bunch of them.
A bunch of them, more than that. But I'm just saying.
Think about Ruth too.
Ruth, that's another one. All I'm saying is these are biblical giants, male and female, that spoke truth to power. And here's the key: made a difference. They made a difference. So the bullshit argument from certain church people that don't talk about, just say you're afraid. Jesus told you not to be afraid. Just tell me you're a coward, and at least I'll work with you on that. Tell me you're afraid. Tell me that you're not persuaded by Luke 9, Luke 12, Mark 8, Mark 13, John 10, when Jesus says, don't be ashamed of me or I'll be ashamed of you. Just tell me that and we can work on it. You can repent from it. Tell me that you're saying, when Jesus said, if you deny me before men, I'll deny you before the Father, that you really are not persuaded by that. You think that Jesus is just talking crap and that he doesn't mean it. Then we'll talk about that. But this is what I understand, because the Islamic person is not ashamed of what they believe. The atheist sure as hell isn't ashamed of what they believe. The Hindu, the Buddhist, but the Christian has to be. And so if I'm sitting out there going,
that's absolutely
you some bitches don't believe what you say you believe. There's no way you do.
So
because
sad.
once you're pressed on it, you fall apart. So the idea of a church and Christians talking about politics, the politique, the ideas advocated by people, the polity, Christians.
Right.
What's
Exactly.
controversial about that?
And we're just going to have to we're just going to get over our bullshit Christian sensibilities about the fact that, yes, and here's the hard truth, a 3-time married, F-bomb dropping, former Playboy billionaire, who exaggerates out the ass. I get
Samson,
it. On a lot of
didn't
things.
God come to Samson when he was in bed with a prostitute?
That guy is the Christian defender. Yeah. Why him? Throughout Christian history, we have had people who have been decidedly unchristian do some real Christian things and actually step in the gap and speak up for Christians when a lot of Christians were running for the high grass. So I don't really give a shit, to be honest, about the fact that he's been married 3 times. Oh no.
He said it.
Because that's not pertinent
I got it.
to this discussion.
Look,
And
this is a battlefield. Go, George.
Can
I'm
we
sorry.
can we talk just for a few minutes? Because I wonder, Karen, I was going to ask about people and Salo if anybody's commented on this. I'm surprised that even as we were talking about polling, that somebody's like, because I hear people still say this, and I see it in comments all over social media. It doesn't matter because they're going to cheat. Because we have. I know you were probably thinking that.
Say that, yes.
And Nico, we have had some fantastic news on that front. People have probably been reading some rather depressing news. If you take it out of context, it's everything, and it's unfortunate. The state of Virginia has been wrapped up in a major tussle with the Department of Justice. Virginia law, and this is, I think, typical of what's happening in a lot of states, but Virginia law, whenever you go to the DMV and you fill out your form to get your driver's license and your identification, that there's a citizenship status on there. And there are people who checked off non-citizen but then fell through the cracks and they were registered. And so Virginia law says, I think it goes back to 2009, has not been very diligent, as have many states in the past not been, of going through those rolls and finding those inconsistencies. People who have registered to vote, who are slated to vote or have voted, but they checked off non-citizen. Somebody just wasn't minding the store. And so what Youngkin has done is he says, that's done. We're going to double down the efforts. We're going to clean up our voter rolls. That's been going on. They were sued by the Department of Justice because they found a number of people, thousands of people who checked off non-citizen, they're getting off their voter rolls. And the Department of Justice sued to keep them on there.
Put them back on.
Because apparently, arguably, and Youngkin's pushing back on this, and he says, I'm going to take it to the Supreme Court if I have to, because supposedly they missed their window for getting them out of there. It's too close to the election. Apparently, you can't do it any closer than 90 days from the election. Youngkin is pushing back on that. But the argument is, so let me get this straight. So if you are a non-citizen and it is illegal for you to vote, you can vote just because I missed, according to the voter law, is it the Voting Rights Act?
Yes.
Because I've missed my clock. He's debating that the clock was missed, but even if the clock was missed, are you serious? This is what the Department of Justice thinks is worthy of a lawsuit. So he's pushing that. But in the midst of all that, we've had a monumental win just this week. The United States Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, after the RNC sued, because Mississippi, the election board, and then by extension election law, said that if mail-in ballots come in, that they can be counted up to 5 days after Election Day. The United States Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, the RNC sued, came in and said, absolutely not. The Constitution says we actually have an election effing day, and that mail-in ballots must be counted on election day. That is a massive win.
But look here, this is such a false argument. What is wrong with both sides wanting a fair election? If we want to hear from the people, I don't understand it. I mean, the Democrats have bitched about it in the past. Republicans are bitching about it now. But how about we all bitch together? And let's just say, let's have fair elections. Let's make sure that if the people speak, and we know the people speak, and they vote in communism and they vote in socialism, then I have a choice to make. I need to go somewhere else, or I need to learn to live in it. But the people have spoken, and that means we've lost the argument, we've lost the debate, and we've lost the court verdict from the people on a set of ideas. That's it.
And you have kind of this pregnant pause because both sides don't want a fair election. That's why.
Okay, fine. But I'm just saying. Right. I'm talking about ideas right now first. Then when you make this point, then you make the other side make that argument. You force the argument.
This is important.
I'm going to commit them. Do you want a fair election? Yes. Do you want to make sure? Do you think citizens? Let's talk about another idea. Should citizens vote? Only citizens. Then let's have that discussion. Should illegal people vote? Illegal aliens, people that are here illegally, should they vote? Well, yes. Give me the reason why. Because if you don't want people illegally taking your stuff or illegally doing this, why do you want them illegally voting that are going to set the rules for taking your stuff illegally or not? I mean, they're not thinking down the road. Exactly, they're not playing it out. And anyway, there has to be a logical consistency in why you're doing this versus why you're doing this. And so let's start there and let's work together on what that means. Showing an ID to vote. What is racist about that? Is such a bullshit straw man argument. And we fall for it. You show your ID for everything. For everything. You can't even get an apartment without an ID. Well, unless you come over the border, then you can get one. But I mean, but you have an ID for everything. So all I'm saying is we've got to be wiser about how we advocate for these ideas. It's a set of ideas advocated by a group of people to affect the lives of others. That's politics, and that's what Christians should be involved in.
Okay, yeah, the ideas that were never deliberated. They were never argued. The legislature never got a chance to weigh in. This Mississippi law, like so many other bullshit election laws, midnight election laws, was passed during, wait for it, the COVID-19 pandemic. And the RNC very strategically, very ably called bullshit on the idea that you have this 5-day deadline after Election Day, during which all kinds of bullshit has been known to happen. And I know that people listening to this program, even as we're talking about, indeed, what is a legitimate break among undecided voters in waves for Trump. And it's looking more and more likely that he will win. The betting markets are favoring him.
Yeah, but don't get your guard down. You got to keep going out there, man.
But I want to get back to your point here because you brought up rallies. It's rallies. It's polls. It's polls from unlikely sources. It's betting markets. There seems to be an aggregate of momentum. And I'm not suggesting we sit on our ass. The opposite, actually, that we work actually even harder. We build our intensity. But things are looking very, very good. I am concerned because on the other side of a conservative party, you have a party that isn't Democrat, as America knows it. It is an authoritarian.
Yeah.
It is a Marxist, ideologically communistic in practice party. And I think, Nico, the next, how many days is it now? Are we 10 days?
10.
10 days away from an election. I'm concerned. If you're people of faith, this is the time to be praying like you've never been prayed before. This isn't a normal election season because of everything that's at stake, but also because the people that are in power are going to do everything they possibly can to remain that way. Can you imagine Merrick Garland contemplating, seriously, a Department of Justice over which he's not in charge?
Oof.
In a Trump administration? Can you imagine Christopher Wray imagining November 6th, right? Where he's not, or at least he's just going to be a lame duck FBI director. He knows it. What are the chances that Alejandro Mayorkas isn't thinking,
They're not waiting around.
what's life going to look like
They have
if
a
Trump's
plan.
inaugurated the day after? Nico, these guys are not going to stop.
Well,
They're not going to stop.
we pray and vote.
And so this is a
educate
very
people.
dangerous time in America. I'm concerned they're going to try to take the president out again, President Trump. It's time to be praying. We should be praying. And yeah, to your point, vote. If you're a Democrat, you'll probably be voting early and often, frequently and often.
Well, you need to encourage 5-10 people to vote. Try to change minds, change hearts, have conversation, educate yourself, be able to defend it. You brought up 2 Timothy 2:15. Do your best to show yourself approved to God, a worker who's not embarrassed to properly handle the word of truth. And so, if you're a person of Christian faith, but if not, if you're just a person that believes in conservative values, what does conservative mean? Hold things together. What are we trying to hold together? The ideals of this country: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and there's meaning to that. That's what we're trying to conserve. That's what we're trying to hold back together because it's being pulled apart. It's being just torn apart and shriveled up. So we need to hold that together. Talk to people, vote, pray, and then we'll see what the Lord says. I mean, he's not freaking out. He's not surprised. He already knows what's going to happen, and we'll deal with it either way. But look, guys, next week it's gonna be live. People have been talking about a live show. This is the appropriate time to do it. It's gonna be a live show. All the details, Salo's had them out there. Please register so we can know who's coming or not. Well, if you're not coming, you don't have to tell me. But I mean, we know who's coming, so we can make sure we have enough seating.
But just basically Prestige Motorsports.
Yeah, well, it's on there. Yeah, Prestige Motor. You got all
November
the
2nd, 9 a.m.
You got the design. He's got the address. Just sign up and come. And it's going to be a Q&A portion as well. We're going to do the regular show. Come orderly. Come with your questions. And have a blessed week.
Peacefully and what?
I don't know.
Don't
March.
say that.
I mean, I'm wired differently, man. Be careful. God bless you guys. Have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for joining in. Share this with someone you think may benefit from it.